Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana, and we're here today with special guest, Sherianna Boyle, who's here to share with us her new book, Just Ask Spirit. Free your emotions to energize intuition and discover purpose. So are you looking to develop a deeper connection with spirit? Well, you're not the only one. Today's guest is here to share with us how to do just that. Sherianna Boyle is the author of 10 books, host of the popular Just Ask Spirit podcast and radio show, adjunct psychology professor, and founder of Emotional Detox Coaching. She is known for her revolutionary cleanse method featured in each of her emotional detox books. So welcome to the show, Sherianna Boyle.
Thanks so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
My goodness, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. Okay, you have to tell me what inspired you to write this.
That's a big question. Yeah, I'm going to say my mom, actually. My mom inspired me. She said to me one day, when are you going to start writing about your spiritual work? And I was like, well, what do you mean? I've been writing about all the other books that I've written. But she's like, no, like really write about what you do. And she encouraged me. She said, you have to write how you connect with spirit. You've got to do that.
Oh my gosh, what a great story. And, I'm so glad that you did because you really cover a lot that I think a lot of people have questions about. Did you feel like when you were writing this book, you were really channeling in some way?
Absolutely. I mean, that's usually how all my books happen, quite frankly. Typically, the title of it lands on my lap. I'm never really looking for a title. In this case, it was interesting, Marianne, because I was saying the title for years out loud. So I would have clients that would come to see me for my emotional detox work. That's what I'm mostly known for. And during that session, they would start to ask questions. And I'd say, I don't know, well, let me just ask spirit. And then I would tap in. And then sure enough, they started to catch on and people started booking sessions and wanting me to ask spirit. So I was saying the title for years, not realizing it was going to be a book title.
I found that so fascinating. We've known each other for a while. I know how highly gifted and intuitive you are. So when we talk about spirit, what are we talking about?
Yeah, well, that's a good question too. And that is a lot to unpack. And certainly what I do in Just Ask Spirit, it's when I speak of spirit, I'm speaking of consciousness, I'm speaking of light, awareness, infinite oneness, energy of pure unconditional love, essence. And then of course we have the soul as well. So I've interviewed so many people. I have a podcast called Just Ask Spirit, and I've interviewed probably over 150 people who've had near-death experiences and individuals who connect with spirit. And I've listened to how they define spirit. Again, that oneness, that consciousness. And for me, I realized that I was connecting a little bit differently. So how I connect with spirit is I tune into what I feel, which is a lot of people, they go on their gut, their intuition. And I tune into the energy of emotions. So when I'm working with a client, what I often say to them is I'm reading your emotions. I'm reading the energy of your emotions, but I can't read them fully if they're not moving. So if they're stagnant, and let's say for example, if somebody asks spirit, and let's say you go to someone and they might answer your questions, and sometimes it feels like, oh yeah, that person really knew me, like a reader or something. And then other times you leave those situations, they're like, nah, they didn't get me. I didn't feel a connection there. And for me, it's so important to honor the emotions. And that's all from my work as an emotional detox and writing all my emotional detox books. is I really learned that when you connect to your emotions, you create that energy, you create that inner movement, and that awakens the senses. And then once you awaken the senses, now you open up like a channel, and you can connect, and you can connect to source, connect to spirit, connect to your spiritual team. And when your energy is moving like that with emotions, it is my understanding at this point in my career that you're vibrating higher, and you're vibrating on a higher consciousness level, and you're connecting to higher dimensions. And that in those higher dimensions is where our spiritual guides reside. And we all have them. We have so many, infinite number of support. And so what I do is I tune into the energy of my emotions, other people's emotions. That raises my vibration. I and that allows me to connect to source, pure energy. It's also very healing at the same time. So it's like getting everything at once. You're getting healing, you're receiving messages, and that's the space that I ask from.
Well, I find that so fascinating how you use your emotions to connect with spirit. For those folks that feel like maybe they feel a little dead inside and they don't feel emotion, how do they move forward with that?
Well, that's been the case for a lot of people, for one, and that's why I wrote the 7-step system that I have in Just as Spirit. Actually, it's my system that's in the last 7 books that I've written. And in this one, I call it the 777 step pathway. And the 7 steps are the 7 steps to processing your emotions, the 7 steps to connecting to spirit, and then 7 practices. And within, there's different categories, and within those categories, like for example, there's archangels. So there's 7 practices of connecting with the 7 archangels there, and the ascended masters and things like that. And I know 7 steps, sometimes people like 3 steps, 4 steps, but for me, those 7 steps become like one process. And so you start, it's the acronym of cleanse, and it starts at the C and it ends with an E. And it's all mindful in nature. So, for example, the C is all about the first step, which is connecting to light. And I teach people how to do that. And then the L is look inward, and that's where you're tapping into emotions, and you're acknowledging your emotions, you're honoring your emotions. And I teach people how to do that in the L. E is emit, and that's where you introduce sound vibration, which, if we know, with, sound is a part of connecting to spirit. I mean, I remember going to church, and my favorite part is the choir, when we're praising, when we're singing, and that's when I feel it the most. So sound, or if you go to the Hindu texts and you using mantra, sacred vibrations to connect with something higher, something greater, all loving force. And so the E is introduces that. And now in we're at the A. And the A is that's where you're going to ask. So there were 3 steps before you ask. And each one of those steps brings you to a state of feeling. And then, of course, I teach people how to ask, and there's different ways to ask. And so the A is there, and then the N is nourish. And now you're going to receive. And that's just as important. Everybody, gets caught up in the ask, but I think the nourish is okay, really practicing receiving that divine guidance, that divine wisdom, and recognizing the different ways it comes. And you do get it right away. I believe it happens right away. However, in the physical world, it might be, it might show up, materialize a little bit differently. I've had situations where I've asked And then several hours later, something occurs. And then I just know. I know it's connecting the dots. I know it's from spirit. I know they heard me. And they're giving me some guidance along the way. And so then the S, now these are more of affirmations because you have to use your free will. So the S is surrender. And surrender means I allow. And that's my free will. And we know that that's a big part of asking spirit. That if you don't allow it, it's not going to happen because that's how much our guides love us. If you're saying yes, which we all do, I do this a lot in my human life, in our human lives. We say yes when inside we're really saying no. So there's a discrepancy there. Well, what I love about asking and working with spirit is I can actually, by going through this process, I can teach myself how to move through those patterns. A pattern of, oh, I said yes again, and I really meant no. And so my Just Ask Spirit practice teaches me that. But so that is surrender. So I allow abundance. I allow support. I allow recognition. I allow, whatever it is that you're allowing, and what you're doing is you're getting in alignment. And then finally, the last step is E, and that's ease. And that is the I am. And that's been written, I think, 700 and something in the Bible. And it shows up again in other traditions and cultures, the power of the I am. And those are affirmations. And that just reminds me that in the end, we're all one. I am. I'm not separate from light. I am light. And so that's the cleanse system, that the 777 step pathway that I'll guide them through every step of the way. And there's space where you can journal. So you can ask, and then you receive, and you write down your thoughts. And there's little tips and along the way to help people to get that information or healing.
And one of the little prompts you have in your book that I really appreciate is, how do you know when spirit is present in your life? And I think when people can sit and take a moment to reflect, and you say here, there are no right or wrong answers, just start writing something down, start journaling. I think it allows them to get into a sense where they're starting to develop this relationship with spirit, as opposed to having spirit be something out there.
Yeah. And I almost find that everything is a spiritual encounter, honestly. I think that I was just talking about this on social media earlier. The thing that can get in the way is that we judge. So let's say we ask, and then something happens in our lives and we judge it. We're like, oh gosh. I remember once my daughter called me, and she said, I've been praying to the angels. I've been asking for help, and they're not helping. And she said, can you ask them for me?
Oh.
That was really cute. And so then something happened. I think it was through podcast. Now I'm remembering, through podcasting. I ended up coming into contact with someone, definitely not a coincidence, that could help her with her situation she was asking about. And the whole time I'm interviewing this person, I'm talking to them, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like this is like perfect. So at the end, I said, would you be willing to talk to my daughter? Da, da, da. And they were like, absolutely. They were just so very generous and kind. Gave her like 10 minutes of their time. I called her, she called them. And she said, Mom, that was the best 10 minutes I've had. It just set me, and I got information I never heard from anyone else. And then number two, I feel focused now. And I said, okay, here's the thing, honey. They heard you. It's just, if we're not listening, or if we're judging, like they don't listen to me, that's a judgment. Then they're going to go through someone else. So they went through me. because I'm open. It's not because they're not listening to you. They went through me to get you connected to this other person. And that's the way it works a lot of times. And that's the loving part of spirit, is they don't give up on us. If we're like shut down or in a negative space or fearful, they will find a way to reach you. They will never give up on you.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Sherianna Boyle in regards to her new book, Just Ask Spirit. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed, and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Sherianna Boyle, in regards to her new book, Just Ask Spirit. I think there's so many people that want to have a deep connection to spirit, but one of the things I hear quite often is, I'm not getting any answers. I don't hear anything. Is there a way around that?
Yeah, it's quite common, or they get guidance, but then they question it. And I think it's a journey. When Just Ask Spirit, the book really is, it's so much more than learning to ask and receive, and you'll get all of that. But I really believe it's about setting foot on a spiritual path of learning how to trust yourself and listen and recognize, like you mentioned before, when is it spirit? When is it ego, kind of thing, and getting practice at that, and recognizing how you can use those skills in daily life. So it doesn't just become like, oh, okay, I'm going to get a reading and then I'll take what they say and then I'll go into my life. No, you're getting your own guidance and then you're applying it. And it is like a step where you're learning to just trust yourself. And more than anything, learning how to trust energy. We're made of energy. Everything's made of energy. And I have learned from being all my emotional detox coaching is I think a lot of people block emotions, which I talk a lot about in this Just Ask Spirit, that when you block emotions, you block spirit. And when we block emotions, we treat them like they're the enemy. We treat them like they're a threat or they're a problem. And so you get a better relationship with yourself as an emotional being. You get that emotional awareness and you elevate your levels of consciousness. And then before you know it, I was talking to someone the other day who was in a high levels of reactivity. And I mean, she was high, really high. And when someone's in high levels, they can't hear anything. They're like, it's hard to get them to hear. And so I found myself, and through the practice of this, I just started to channel. So I connected just like I do with the process. As I'm with this person, I connect and I start channeling and speaking. And all of a sudden, this person's listening. It's unbelievable, Marianne. I'm like, they're listening to me for a second. Like before, interrupting. I'm like, and I'm noticing, and I'm just staying connected because I know when I'm connected, it's like a vibration. It feels very grounding. It feels very strong. It feels secure. And I just start talking, and this person is calming down. They're taking it in, and something's clicking. Their perception is, it was like literally like a click. And it even clicked for me. I was like, things are clicking right now. And the two of us were able to get on the same wavelength. And I believe that was completely, that whole interaction became from being guided by spirit.
Is that because you both of your energy fields, like her energy field came into alignment with yours when you're connected with spirit?
I believe that as my vibration goes, as I was going up, so I paused and I connected, and I'd been, I'm connecting all the time. So just to be transparent about that, I'm always connecting with spirit. I'm always doing these practices every day, at least every day in the morning. And then I might check back in the afternoon and do it again. So as my vibration goes up, as your vibration goes up, people do have a free will choice. They can either collapse their energy, and some people do, meaning this is all more on a subconscious level. I've seen situations where people get really uncomfortable with that. And so they might get defensive, or they might get, and then the other choice is, as my vibration goes up, I believe what was happening, and this happens when you're channeling. You can hear I'm talking a little slower right now. I can feel I'm connected to spirit. You'll hear your tone changes. And this is some of the skills you're going to get. Your tone, your pace. You're not thinking about the next thing you're going to say like we do when we're in our mind. We're already preparing for our comeback. That doesn't happen when you're connected to spirit. And so that person, when they feel that your defenses aren't up, because you can look like you're listening and it can appear that way, but they don't feel it. Now, this person I was talking to happens to be a pretty big feeler. That's why she was so upset. So if somebody has a lot of empathy or they're angry, usually it's because they're a feeler. They feel things, and they get really upset because they feel it strongly. And so I think she was feeling the less defensiveness in me, and then she was able to listen. So it's very interesting. But in terms of knowing, the point is knowing when you're one with spirit and you're receiving that energy, that light. And we are light. So it's about being in alignment with who we really are. And I do believe that if we can all learn to function, to communicate, to problem solve, to create, and be connected to our higher selves, and we can process our emotions at the same time, I really believe that that's how we're going to create peace.
How impactful is that? Now, earlier you mentioned that you are always connected to spirit. For those that are new to connecting with spirit, what would be a way that they could start? What's like a little baby step that we could take?
Well, just know that when you process your emotions, you connect to spirit. That's what I've learned after all of these years. When you choose to say, I allow myself to feel, I allow, and what that a baby step they can take is breath. When you breathe, you're choosing to connect to spirit. Breathing in and out through your nose. If you just practice breathing in and out, nice and slow through your nose, and your belly inflates on inhale and your belly deflates on exhale, and you call it conscious breathing. Breathing consciously with awareness, nice and slow, no rushing. You will start to calm yourself down. So from a brain standpoint, you're taking yourself out of fight, flight, freeze, freak out, fix, response. That's number one. Take nice deep breaths. And sometimes you might stretch with those breaths. You might move your body a little bit with those breaths. You might go outside and take those breaths. And you start to feel a little calmer. And what I encourage people is, well, just don't stop there. Don't just say, okay, I feel better, and then go back to work, right? Stick with it for a little bit. And that's why those 7 steps, they get you to, it's like stretch it out a little bit. And so now you're in a calmer state. Now you really do need to acknowledge your emotions. Again, it's those steps of the cleanse. And for people who are just starting, they're like, then, maybe you just practice the first step, which is, again, you could connect to light. You could visualize it, imagine light, white light, any light, just beautiful light, beautiful sunlight. Just imagine, visualize light, connect to it. That could be what you practice for a little while. I'm going to practice taking 20 seconds, and I'm choosing consciously with my own free will to connect to light. And I could add my breath, and I can breathe in and out, and I can be with the light. Just practice that. That's going to calm you down. You're going to start to open things up a little bit. I recommend going through the rest of the steps, because sometimes what happens, like I mentioned in the other example, sometimes when we connect, when the vibration goes up, we get a little nervous, because people don't realize that when vibration goes up, sometimes your heart rate goes up for a couple seconds. Things feel like their heart rate goes up, but that's because energy's moving. It's not because something's wrong. It's because energy's moving. So then you just notice that. Oh, that's interesting. And you got to work through that. And it's not a bad thing. It's just breathing in and breathing out. And if I feel my heart rate go up, a lot of psychic mediums have talked about this. The heart rate goes up. So a lot of people think it's anxiety. And you just connect. And eventually you're going to get over that hump. But that's why I recommend the cleanse, because you go to that third step, emit, and that's going to help you calm down and distribute that light in a way, and it's going to ground you. Because again, part of the process is your heart goes up, so that emit, it will ground the energy. And that's going to prepare you for asking.
Thank you for sharing that. I just love that. And for our listeners that really want to connect with their spirit teams, how can they recognize that, first of all, who their spirit teams are, and how to develop that personal relationship? Do they follow the same principle?
I believe the way that I teach it is process your emotions, set the intention, go through the 7 steps, And within those steps, when you ask, that's where you can get specific if you choose to. You can ask a specific guide. You can get to know the guides that I introduce you to in the book. Again, the 7 archangels are there. I'll introduce you to them. I'll introduce you to the ascended masters. Some of the ascended masters are in there. Also, if you're not into any of that, you can go to nature. And we call that spirit, the spirit of water or the spirit of a mountain. Everything is energy. You could go to Mother Earth if that feels more comfortable for you. And those are there as well. And maybe you feel more connected to the animals and the birds. And those feel like your friends, your team. I remember spirit shows up. A lot of people believe, like when they see a cardinal or something, like that's my dad, right? That's my mom. Yeah. And so that's another way. And you feel it in your body. And before you know it, again, remember emotions awaken the senses. If you want to connect with a loved one, same thing. You just have to put your attention there. And you have to ask, please come in. Please show me you're with me. Give me a sign. Some people need to have a sign. But if we're in fear or freak out, and even with our emotions, it's like we want to fix them. We want to make them go away. We have to learn how to be at peace with them. We have to learn to appreciate them. They are a resource to connecting to the divine.
That is so impactful. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. I mean, in your book, you go over so many things like amplifying our connection and what gets in the way and clearing patterns. There are so many just very beneficial approaches to having this deep connection. And it all starts with feeling and then asking.
Yeah. Yeah. Be open. It's there, available, and to everyone. And that could be the thing. I mean, it could be that you're doing nothing wrong. People want to know what can I do? How can I figure out? They get stuck in their heads about it. They learn to just live with high levels of stress. They're in coping. And after a while, you have to just say to yourself, this way isn't working for me. This approach that I'm doing here. And the good news is that when you ask spirit, it's going to be practices that teach you how to get out of your head and into your body and into your heart and connected to the present moment. So it's really a win-win. No matter what, you're just going to find that you get a lot of grounding from it. And then when you start receiving messages and guidance, it's a lot of fun. And when you start really trusting those messages and listening, then it really becomes fun because you start becoming really confident.
So you talk about in your book the path 7777. What is that?
Yeah. So again, 7 steps to processing your emotions. That's the cleanse. That's the CLEANSE. 7 archangels. Also, which I didn't mention before, we have 7 chakras. And those are energy centers. And a lot of our emotions, when they get blocked, you can pick that up in the energy center. So it starts at the base of the spine and it goes up to the crown of our heads. And so when we connect to the archangels or ascended beings of light or nature, whatnot, you're also connecting to those chakras. So 7777. So the chakra system. And then I have the different pathways, I call them. So the archangel pathway, that's a pathway that you can go. The ascended master pathway, the spirit energy of nature spirits. That's a third pathway that I show people. So that's why I'm calling it 777, 7-step pathway, which happens to be a very high vibrational spiritual number. When you see those 3 or 4 sevens, that's all about opening up your spiritual awakening, your consciousness elevating. It's like taking yourself to the next level.
Well, I found your book, Just Ask Spirit, to be so impactful. My goodness, what a just profound read this is. It's really helped me on my spiritual path. What do you want readers and our listeners to take away from your book?
I'm hoping they make the connection that I've made a strong enough connection so they can see that the anatomy of our emotions is the anatomy of spirit. And that's something that I show the research on, that show the connections between the brain and the body. And so my hope is, which has been really my hope with all the books, is that people to learn to turn to their emotions, not away from them. And my motto is, your emotions matter, processing them matters more.
Where Sherianna, you're such a just resource for people and such an inspiration. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
Oh, thank you very much. It's my website is sheriannaboyle.com. Just Ask Spirit, you can get that at justaskspiritbook.com, and there's a free gift there for people. There's a meditation there. And I have the Just Ask Spirit community. And that's a place, because I knew once people got their hands on the book, they're going to want to practice. So in that community, we meet once a week live with me. It's only a half hour. And you can practice together and connecting and asking spirit and receiving messages. And I'll go over some of the concepts in the book.
Well, Sherianna, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sherianna. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Just Ask Spirit. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.